Greetings from Arcadia, and welcome to Talking with Famous People. Yes, the most talkiest, most withest, most famousest, most peopliest television program ever broadcast on the internet live forever. Hi, Rachel Apollosa. Did you get my Google Hangouts message? I was quite enamored with my epicest any mic drop moment video. Last night, there was this very epically mic droppy freestyle thing that I did. I just excerpted the best part of it and just said, boom. The thing is, I want to stress, I really genuinely appreciate Cloud because he forces me to answer some basic questions that I normally don't bother thinking about very much. For example, he said something interesting in the live chat last night, which was the SE and NE are in the moment, and SI and NI are about not in the moment in some capacity. So it made me realize that there's an easy misconception to make based on what I say about there being two kinds of time, namely real time and cross time or turn based. The thing is, all functions, all being exists in the moment. In other words, it's not possible to be a human being in the future or the past. Our ENTJ is soulless. Okay, well, SI polar people can have that vibe, but I'll get back to that question. The answer is no, they're not soulless, but there's a certain soul. They have a paucity of soul. Let's say that. Criminal plus Chem is all the evidence you need that Eminem is obviously ENTP. I mean, look, if you look at the body of work and you just think about what it is that he's doing all the time when he's being a rapper, you're going to have to say that the extroverted intuition is in the dominant or second slot. It's got to be one or two. So as far as the other thing is, what you're pointing out there is FI polar. FI polar is pretty evident in his work too. And so I agree he's totally an ENTP, but I understand why people dispute that on the grounds of interviews with him. He doesn't come across as one, but not on the grounds of other stupid reasons people say, like, well, he's writing about SE stuff. Well, in the, I do want to watch that. I'm not familiar with it at all, but I can't watch it right now. Let me open it or copy and paste this or something. I don't know. Because I can come back and find this link if I remember. Try to remind me before in the stream because I want to watch that. I'll think about it. Hi, Octavio Silva. Hi, Mr. Silva. How are you? Are you a bear today again? Do you enjoy honey? Stan is brilliant, but I personally put it this way. It's for my taste, it's too much dependent on the story in the song. Like, I actually don't want my rap songs to be quite that NI, maybe. It's a little too NI. But I respect it entirely. Criminal is my favorite too. I love Criminal. I love the opening song on Marshall Mathers LP. Well, I was just a little baby boy. Mama used to tell me she hated things. She used to tell me my daddy was an evil man. She used to tell me he hated me. But now I'm a little bit older, and I think that she was a crazy one. And they say I can't rap about coke no more. They say I can't rap about milk no more. I think I won't choke no whore till the vocal cords don't work in her throat no more. These motherfuckers think I'm playing it. You know what I'm saying? It's just it's a great song. I remember, here's the thing. When I first heard that Marshall Mathers LP, when it first came out, and I bought the CD, took it out of the cellophane, opened it, put it in my car, and started driving and listening to it. But just the very beginning of that first song with that weird beat, or whatever it does, I was just immediately, I got goose pimples and just like, oh my God, this thing is amazing. It just blew me away. It was astonishing. It was the greatest thing I'd ever heard. You know, it was like, wow, this is great. Why is Will Smith a successful ENFP? He might be an ENFP. He might be an NFJ too, but I'm not sure. Will Smith being an ENFJ seems to make more sense to me than ENFP. One of the reasons why he's very successful is, I mean, right from the outset of the album, like the first song, it launches so brilliantly, and it's like, oh, it's the moment of sea change, because it's like all of a sudden this album drops, and I mean the first one was it was basically a compilation of the best of his old catalog stuff he had done before getting a contract and stuff. And there was one song on it that was produced for that record, which was My Name Is. So yeah, it's just like everything was different musically in hip hop after that album. Everything was different, better. I mean, he improved hip hop dramatically, because he made it such that you had to not just rap successfully well, but you had to say interesting things too. Will Smith is great too. I respect Will Smith quite a bit. He's great. He's a great rapper. There's a number of, in fact, I am quite certain there's a Will Smith song out there that can make snappy tracks that I haven't thought of. I just haven't actually considered to, like, okay, what's the best Will Smith song, or like that? Which one might make snappy tracks? I know there must be one or two out there. Is The Rock an ENFP? I have no idea if The Rock's an ENFP. Well, if you got an ENTJ girl who's spouting bullshit, well, you got to check that stuff. Switch is a good song by Will Smith. Okay. And I got to check out FAC as well. One of my very favorite Eminem songs is that one where it's so juvenile, but I just like the way it bounces. Is the one where the beat stops, and just like let one rip, and then there's everybody's dancing. I don't know what's it. Everybody get to the dance floor. That one. I can't remember what it's called, but I like that song a lot. Switch. Let's check that one out. So, time. When people exist, they exist in time. Just Lose It. Right. I like that one. Just Lose It. That's a funny one. It's a fun song. It bounces along so nicely. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Yeah, it's weird. It's like, if you think about it, and it's probably true for just about everybody to some extent, but as they get older, even more so. But the amount of my ontological space that is occupied by music is astonishing. Like, how many songs do I know, or I'm familiar enough with to like sort of sing it to you right now, at least hum the melody to it and sort of hear it in my head. Like, I can hear that Eminem song in the head almost, but I can't. It's got multiple parts to it, and I can't obviously sing all those. Sometimes I can hear more clearly in my head than others, depending on how familiar with them I am, I guess, or how much I've internalized the NI of the entity. That's just the way I am. Because I am whatever you say I am. Then just say I am. Yeah. So anyway, extroverted intuition. When I'm talking like this, as I'm going through a live stream and just talking about random things, responding to things in the live chat, this is naturally employing extroverted intuition. When an NI Dom does this, like Frank James, he'll read one of those things and he'll give an answer to it. And then he'll read another thing, give an answer to it. and everything's very steady in that fashion. Whereas with me, I might read a thing, give a bit of an answer to it, and then dovetail off into a bunch of different things. Blah, blah, blah. If you get an ISTP or an ISFP, they might be better served live streaming if they already had an audience that could prompt them a bunch of stuff in the live chat. But if they have dead space where nobody's chatting at them, then they're stuck. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. So it's very unlikely they'll ever become a live streamer because there's an early part of the process in which you basically have to talk to no one. And so who can do that? Who can sit there and talk to no one out loud indefinitely? There's really only one type that likes to do that, and that's an any DOM. Somebody like Susie, who's any tool function, she really needs participants in the live chat in order to keep a live stream going, because she's not accustomed to having her extroverted intuition be the dominant, namely expressing overtly all the time. That's her TI, and her any is a tool function. It needs something to work on. Do I know Critical? He's either ISTP or INTP, and he's a live streamer. I looked on your opinion. I don't know who he is. What's he talk about? The other thing is, in that mic drop moment, maybe Cloud gets the unfortunate end of the stick there, but I appreciate Cloud. I really do. He pisses me off a lot, but I appreciate him because he forces me to address this question, like his distinction between SE and NE being in the moment and SI and NI being something else. I think it's really important that we all understand what I mean when I say there are two kinds of time. In the moment, I might be employing attention that exists in an ecosystem of turn-based things. Like when I'm talking right now, it's turn-based. I'm expressing ideas in succession. The order of the words matters. It's not unlike if I were to be having sex with you right now, then that would be a different sort of experience. That'd be a real-time experience, which is to say, it's not dealing in definitional objects at all. It's not dealing in things that can be very easily collapsed down into symbols. It's not a symbolic action. This is a symbolic action, which is to say, I'm acting with words, I'm acting with ideas, I'm acting with meow. Is it me who's causing the buffering or you? So comedians who tend to be good at improv comedy are NE DOMs. Probably. I mean, I think it's conceivable to have SE DOMs attempt to do that or want to do that, but they're going to engage in much more physical clowning and much less wordplay. Like, I would say that Jim Carrey is an example of somebody who probably has extroverted intuition, but tends to do more SE style, include a lot more SE in his humor than say I do. I don't know why that is, but he's a comedian I don't like at all. Comedians that I don't like probably don't use extroverted intuition. I've never seen an improv skit that I thought was funny. Yeah, well, it's I agree. I hate improv comedy. Improv comedy is great if you are engaging back and forth with people and there's riffing and stuff, and it's more of a like high energy party or a party that's filled with zesty visibleness. But if you're an audience member watching other people have that party, and especially when they're straining because they're on stage, it's not going to work. Comedian George Carlin is probably ENTP, maybe ENFP. I just don't like him. I just don't like George Carlin. His sanctimoniousness indicates a failure to reflect upon the fundamental equality of other people's modalities. You know, what type is 123? He's an ENFP. Remember, I'm pretty sure, right? 123. Yeah, you're ENFP. ISFP improv. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as ISFP improv or ISTP improv. They just don't do that. Who 123 tends to present singular ideas? Well, I mean, he's typing in the chat here. Will a sheltered high NE user appear to use less NE because they're not exposed to much? I mean, introverted NE users appear to use a lot less NE because they don't extrovert it as much. You know, it's like it's in the service of their dominant introverted function. So, like, look, if your dominant function is introverted, oh, you're INFJ. Oh, I didn't know. I don't know. I just trying to remember. I wasn't trying to assess. Okay, so when I said I thought it was ENFP, I was saying as far as I remember, I think he self-identified as an ENFP, but I was wrong about that. I am not assessing him at all. I don't know what type he is from my own personal assessment. He says he's INFJ. I'll take it as a word. You know. Why are so many people calling themselves empath? I don't know, Maxi Kemp. I'm not sure. Oh, that's what that is? That's FI? Okay, sure. When people tell me I've misidentified FI as something else, I assume they're probably right. That's certainly something I do. I see a lot of high NE users with vast knowledge of pop culture, history, seemingly everything, and I've never ever related to that. So I mean, you're battling between ISFP and INFP, right? FI is a reality shaping like a weird sort of framework. Are you talking about when you say are you talking to me or are you talking to 123? Oh, you were ENFP. Okay, cool. Yeah, 123 is ENFP. Vinci Deluxe, FI is more like being shaped to you. Are you saying I'm an ISXP? Yeah, okay, sure. Maybe you should watch my mic drop moment video. I've observed that ENFP has to be careful with taking deep or sad roles because it affects them longer than most. Oh, I see. Like if they're playing a character that's mean or something, they'll internalize it. Hi, CJ O'Connell. No, I'm not FI. Obviously, I'm FI polar. So yeah, about the time thing. It's when I'm expressing right now extroverted intuition across time. What I mean is I'm using a turn-based modality, a symbolic-based modality, in order to convey stuff that works on the metaphysical planes. In other words, I'm putting stuff onto the external metaphysical plane for you to pick up, take into your internal metaphysical plane, do what you're going to do with it, either process it by a TI or FI, or link it back to memories, SI, or sort of know about it with NI. Thank you, 123. And then presumably you're going to spit back out to me on the external metaphysical field. Here's information about how I processed that. And so this is one of the things that's frustrating for an EHP a lot of times is I put stuff out on the external metaphysical plane, assuming people are going to take it to their internal metaphysical plane and process it in some meaningful way. For example, with TI, you know, and then spit back out to me their conclusions about it. But that's not what happens at all. You know, some people who are more FI, like Cloud's I'm gonna throw something out on the metaphysical field. He's gonna take it into its internal metaphysical field, but he's not going to parse it on its merits as a symbolic object. He's gonna link it to his SI. He's gonna link it to his weak NI, and mostly he's gonna see how he feels about it, and that's gonna be determined by how much it links to what he's saying. If it negates what he's saying, he's going to feel bad about it and not like it. If it affirms what he's saying, he's going to feel good about it. Is playing poker a way for ENFPs to access TI since it's really impersonal, especially online? That's probably a good point. Yeah, I would say it is a good way to access TI. But the thing is, poker is more about FE than it is about TI. Much more. Online poker, less so. But real poker is about FE. You have to read the person. You have to read the people. Why I'm bad at it. I try to play it with TI. And if you try to play it with TI, you're bad. Because that just means you're playing tight. You're only playing the best hand. You only bet or don't bet, depending on whether you think, it's a bunch of sort of math calculations or pseudo math calculations, and then people just read you and just know exactly what you're holding and fold or whatever, So the thing about poker is it's about extracting money from people, and that's about by reading them so that you're one step ahead of them all the time. I think of it as being about the cards, and it's never about the cards. If you want to play well. Which type tend to be the most crazy? Like you just want to have a camp at the weekend, but comes back with a band and 10 stuff. Probably ESFJ would do that most. I guess. Might be more TI at the absolute highest level where they're all stone faced. FE is good at extracting money. That's why poker is FE. Yeah. Hi Eric, I notice your FE quite a lot for third function. I find FI third is much different as the third function introverted extroverted PJ. Yeah, it's a lot different. I agree. But I think the same basic value matrix applies, which is to say the third slot function is selfish. So if I'm FI, third slot, that's the only one where selfishness is in and of itself unselfish. So it's like an FI person wants to do nice things for somebody because they like them and they think that, and they want that person to be happy. Cameron is an example of third slot FI for me. He's always doing thoughtful things. Like he found these little gold guns, this bag of little gold guns that work perfectly with my Mindy and Tiffany stuff. And so he brought it to me and said, hey, would you like to use these for your thing? That's FI third. It's considerate and kind and actually helpful and not doing it for any sort of praise because they like to see me, because he genuinely like to help or something. Like one could imagine if there was a problem that needed to be fixed and he would fix it and never say anything, and I would have no idea that it had been fixed, and he would still feel good about it, right? It doesn't matter if I know or not. So that's I'm not sure if Cameron was ever really FE awkward. He does talk a lot about his childhood, teenage years, and being bullied, basically, and those memories of events like that stick large for him, and he references stuff from the past a lot, and so he's quite FE pleasant as an adult. As I explained the other day, I think FE Polar gets a thin band of FE. Whether or not it's awkward or not depends on where that thin band of FE is. And he definitely has a thin band of FE. How do we talk about the regisseur? I don't know what the regisseur is. I mean, the thing about Cameron, he's not scary remotely. He's always got, he's the ultimate, ISTJs are the ultimate Boy Scouts. They're prepared. I'm like, Cameron, I forgot to bring water. Don't worry, I got a case of water in the back. Yeah. It's like, Cameron enables me to be a baby. Yeah, poker is not the game for me. Ultimately, it makes me mad. The only way that, but I know at some point in the future I'm going to go try it again, because I keep thinking, all right, look, Eric, you do it right if you just keep in mind what you've learned from before about what not to do, and try playing it how you know it ought to be played, rather than how you normally play. At least try. I think to myself. But of course, the problem is with poker, it's the same thing as with taxpayer money. It's the same thing as with horse racing. The house takes a cut of things. If you're playing cash games, then there's going to be a rake, and the rake will kill you. It'll just kill you. It'll take a big chunk out of every pot, and you're going to have to be so much better than everybody else. In other words, you have to be 25% better than other people, not just a little bit better, because you have to beat not just that, but cover the rake as well. So it's difficult to win in cash games. A much better approach to playing poker is a tournament poker, where your money is invested at the outset. The cut that the casino takes at the outset is taken, and then for the tournament, it's fair thereafter. So it's like there's a big pool of money that people pay to get into the tournament, and then the casino takes a cut of that, and the rest of that pool of money is paid out in prizes. So if you win, you know it's like that's a way better way to do it because how much money you lose and time spent at the table aren't linked. In fact, it's the opposite of normal. It's like the more time you spend at the table at the tournament, the better you're doing. You're getting more return for your money. In other words, more time at the table and presumably getting closer to winning a prize. And presumably you can, yeah. Blackjack better for you. You can keep the math, the basic strategy and counting. It might be. I have played blackjack on occasion in the past, and I've won at it almost every time I've played it because I tend to walk away once I've doubled my money. And blackjack, you can kind of go up easy, I guess. You can also lose right away easy. So, how long does the poker tournament take? It can take a long time depending on how many people are entered into it. But you know, your average tournament with say 100 people, 200 people entered or whatever, it take about 8 hours, 8 to 12 hours. Yeah, I'm certainly aware of that. I don't count them exactly, but I do think to myself, okay, well, if this guy does have what I think he has, yeah, then he's ahead of me. It'll be a horse race basically because I've got this is outs. Any of those things. I don't say I have this many outs, but I know which category of outs I have, and I think well, that's a pretty good chance of I might get one of those cards. I do that, yeah. Jay Kerwitz says same. As soon as I double my money, I'm out. I don't care how cheap I look. Right. I go in there. You start with $40 or $50, and if I get to 80 or 100, then I'm out. You know. Why do you never come in the whereby rooms anymore? What happened? Well, that's an interesting thing. Basically, I don't go. Okay, I got a text yesterday from Matthew, and I wasn't supposed to say anything about that. I was supposed to say I got a text from. Sorry, my bad. I fucked up. Forget that text. So the point is, the main reason I don't go in there is because, if I were gonna go in there and spend time in there, I'd want it to produce a video. And if it doesn't produce a video, then I don't want to spend time in there. I don't want to go in there and chat with people just to hang out most of the time. I'd rather double the purpose of that and make a video. If I'm going to just be hanging out, I like hanging out, just hanging out with Rachel. That's nice. But real life people, fine. We're just hanging out. We don't need to make a video all the time. But sorry. The point is, there's that aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is, it's, as far as I can tell, fairly toxic in there. Like it's got the spite monkeys sort of gathering there, and I think it's odd. I don't quite understand why cognitive dissonance never kicks in. You know. All right, so I'm just give me a second here to deal with something. Sorry. Okay. So, yeah, the reason I don't go in there anymore is basically, um, basically that well, okay, it's an interesting experiment, right? It's like when I first started those hacking on our end to make it work the way I wanted it to, but eventually we had a room where people hung out and it automatically recorded the room. It cut it into chunks, video size, uploaded it automatically to a channel, and published it. It's called the Raw Room, Raw Channel. As YouTube changed, they didn't like that, and one of those channels got deleted for copyright violations, and the other one, I haven't uploaded anything at all. I haven't even opened that channel yet to see. You know, it's like if I were to open that channel, I'm quite sure that the dashboard would scream at me, "You've got all these copyright things, you got all this whatever." So I'm just leaving it alone, basically. But yeah, so if you wanted to see what the original experiment was, you could go to the following channel and watch some videos and see exactly what it was. It was at least we have that. At least we have left over some footage of what it was. And here's the channel. It's called TWFP Raw 2. It'll never upload another video, but this is it. And for a stretch of time, we had two of those things going concurrently 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day. And my hope was that they'd fill up and that we'd have two channels constantly publishing all these conversations that were happening and gradually grow and build more and more rooms and more channels, like doing the same thing. Of course, there's no audience for the channels. Nobody wants to watch that. My original notion was that that people would, like, as they're having arguments, you said this, you said that. All right, let's go check the tape. Never happened. People didn't do that, which is fine. My other original experiment idea was basically, look, this is for posterity. All these people years from now are going to want to look back at what they were doing back then, and to the extent they were spending all the time on the internet, at least there'd be a record of it. And that as technology advanced, there'd be some sort of app that I could say, back process all my videos, and the app would go back and transcribe them all, organize them, tag them, do all that kind of shit for me. I thought I had. Anyways, it was an experiment. What do people do when you have a community like that is a bunch of people? It has a limited number of space in the rooms, because there were such times when it would be like, this room is full. Every time you try to go into the rooms, it would be full. So it was so active. But ultimately, the basic notion of filming and uploading all those videos, uploading every conversation and making everything transparent and public in that fashion, not having any behind closed doors shit, was the core concept. When Chloe killed the Raw 1 channel, it was a wound to my heart. And it was the end of a dream. But so at that point, I lost interest in the Raw rooms entirely. Now, from what I understand in general, they become a place where people who hate me go to plan what they're going to do against me, which is odd, again, because I keep wondering, why doesn't cognitive dissonance kick in at some point and they go, hold on, are we being spiteful against somebody who's really a good person and doesn't deserve it? And are we behaving adequately? In talking so much shit about Eric and condemning him so much, are we behaving adequately? The thing is, they might say, well, you're talking so much shit about us. Well, I mean, come on. That's silly. You're just being dissembling. That's not the reality of things. The reality of things is I'm describing actual bad behavior, and they're trying to preserve their ability to act in secret. Cognitive dissonance is what happens when you've got something that just doesn't make any sense. I use cognitive dissonance in my case on nuclear weapons. An example of why will the negotiations with why are the negotiations with Iran doomed to fail? They're doomed to fail because in an international state of affairs where nuclear weapons are neither illegal nor legal, in other words, in a lawless state of affairs, the United States, being the one with all the nuclear weapons, is telling Iran, we are going to force you to not get any. But the United States doesn't want to just say directly, if you get any, we will blow you up. So it's trying to force Iran to negotiate with the U.S. about how and why they will comply with the U.S.'s lawless bullying. That creates cognitive dissonance. Those negotiations will never work, obviously. They're not negotiations. Gunpoint talks are not negotiations. Given the fact that Iran can't say, no, we decline your deal, we're going to just go ahead and make nuclear weapons. Given the fact that that's not an option for them, supposedly, it is absolutely not the case that those negotiations could ever work, because they're not negotiations. And that cognitive dissonance means Iran will never feel any obligation to actually uphold its end of the bargain, because it's not a bargain. And the United States will never actually feel legitimate in its behavior. It'll always be realized that, hey, this is just utilitarian justifications. Ultimately, Iran can't have them because we don't like them and they're crazy. Well, I mean, that's not a reason. There's no legitimate appeal to anything in stopping Iran from getting nuclear weapons. No, I'm not saying I want Iran to get nuclear weapons. I'm saying if we're going to make the claim that they can't have them, we need to have some sort of justification that applies universally to all states. So if there's some sort of criterion by which you have to meet in order for nuclear weapons to become legal for you, then let's have that articulated. It's not the case. It's just the U.S. bullying people. So the fact is, that's cognitive dissonance. Negotiating a bargain at gunpoint with a bully about how you're going to be bullied, and then thinking that either side is going to respect that bargain, is insane. It wasn't attained consensually. It creates cognitive dissonance. When the person goes to fulfill their end of the bargain, they'll always remember, wait a second, this isn't a bargain I wanted to enter into. I was forced to enter into this. This isn't a bargain at all. And then that's going to break the shit down. So, yeah, trying to do that creates cognitive dissonance. It doesn't make any sense. And when shit doesn't make any sense, this big logical flaw in something, or it runs afoul of somebody else's, some other metric, like, for example, if I try to force you to be in love with this guy instead of that guy, it creates cognitive dissonance. If I tell you, listen, let's say I'm your mother. Look, Bob is better for you than Joe, Mary. Okay, listen. You love Bob, not Joe. Love Bob, okay? Bob's good, and we don't like Joe. And then the person goes, okay, and then they try to do it. Okay, I'll try to love Bob and not Joe. It creates cognitive dissonance. Why? Because they're asking the FI, they're doing something that's FI illogical. If somebody makes a scene with others because of how they feel, are they FI dominant? No. It could be ENTP. Like, I make a scene when I'm upset too. Like, when Kimberly used to push on my FI, I'd freak out after a certain period of time and scream and yell, Look, Bob makes a lot more money though, Max Clay. A lot more. Mary needs that. Um, Let me pull this bowl. It's a good question, Hobo Mojo. Hobo Mojo, I like that question. Well, the answer is it depends what you're teaching. If you're teaching closed systems, you're probably better off being a TE user, or at least demonstrative TE like an EHP. EHPs are great teachers. And the reason is mostly because we have demonstrative TE, we've got absolute value FE, and to a point TI, which means, for a lot of different reasons, we're going to be effective as a teacher. But a TE user, my dad, I'm quite sure, is very effective as a teacher, provided he's teaching something that's a closed system, which is, say, math, physics, chemistry, something like that. Then it's a very ordinal kind of thing you're teaching. First, you need to learn this, then you learn that, then you learn the other thing, then you learn the other thing. And it's a concrete set of maths you need to learn. It's very possible to have a structured curriculum that does a great job of teaching something like that without having to require much responsiveness or interactivity from the teacher. Like if I'm going to do a good job teaching debate, it has to be extremely interactively responsive. In other words, I have to check to see how the kid's doing it now, change that, check again, change that, check again, change that, check again. It's a very interfacey modality. TE is interfacey, but it interfaces with the system, not with the people. And so it's like the best way to teach debate is an FE. I'm checking to see really what the other person knows and perceives and how they're going to deal with this shit. And then I'm using demonstrative TE, which is to say I'm solving that problem by explaining it. The things I'm explaining, though, are right on the edge. They include both TE and TI. I'm explaining ordinality. If they say this first, then you say this, then they say that. But I'm using conditionality because I'm saying the reason this responds to that is because if this and this and this, then that. But that, if not that, then not this. So I'm using both, right? It's mostly conditionality, but there's an ordinality to it because what the TE part of it is really the mechanics part. So it's like a good debater will have all the pre-work done and understand how to do the TE style work during the round. Pre-work means pre-flowing it, for example. If you have your case already made, which of course you do before you go into the debate round, you have to flow it out. So you might as well pre-flow your own side. You can't flow it when you're reading it, obviously. So you have your case already set up on a piece of paper. I made my debater these papers, which he just has to circle things as to what his opponent is running. Once you get super familiar with all the arguments being run on a given topic, you can literally do that. So this paper says, like, okay, what is he doing on framework? Consequentialism, util, social welfare, what's his VC? And there's only like a limited number of possibilities that people typically run. So you can just circle them. Now, the thing is, that's good TE. The other kind of good TE is to have a if then AT sheet set up. So it's like you list all the possible arguments that the AF sometimes makes, and you have set up on that sheet which cards to read in response, what to read in response to it. That's excellent TE. Probably the Not maybe not this year, maybe not last year. I'm not sure, but the year before that, the best debate coach in the country, Scott Wheeler, my former assistant coach. The reason we call him the best debate coach in the country, and there shouldn't be any argument about it, is his kids won the national championship 2 years in a row in policy debate, and that's the king of debate. And if you win 2 years in a row national champion in policy debate, you have a legitimate claim to best coach in the country. Anyway, he was at this tournament that I was at this weekend, and his kid did as well as my kid in novice. Oh no, that wasn't his kid. Sorry, that's a different school. Anyway, I guess I didn't compete against him. He's probably just in varsity. Regardless, he's an ESTJ. So what is that? No, Eric, ESTJ, best debate coach in the country. Yep. And the reason is there really is mostly a finite number of angles you can make in all of public policy debate, regardless of what topic it is, what anything, all of public policy and all of philosophy. You can taxonomy all the total arguments that are possible, and you can have it all set up like, well, if they run A-spec, this is the answer. If they run imperialism, this is the answer. If they run neolib, this is the answer. If they run anthro, this is the answer. And in fact, so it's like what debate does, it takes a whole bunch of arguments, like, let's say the gist of a set of arguments. Yeah, we're cool. Scott and I are great. Wheeler and I are great. I like him. He likes me. We always chat with each other when we see each other at tournaments briefly. I mean, we were never friends outside of debate, like in the sense that we did go to a party together one time, but we didn't really hang out. He doesn't really have time to hang out. He's always working. But yeah, we're great. I am on good terms with all my former assistant coaches. I have no beefs with any former coaches that I've worked with or anything like that. I have beef with my former boss, who was not a coach and who was just a businesswoman. I have beef with some coaches on other teams, a couple of them, in fact. In my kid's sixth round, I went in to go watch him, but I turned right around and left because the judge was an assistant coach on another squad that I've had beef with before, or who had beef with me and then got schooled, Have you ever heard of the movie Rocket Science? It's a good one about a kid with a bad stutter trying out for the debate team and meeting a girl and then unknown Anna Kendrick. No, I never have heard of it. But yeah, I really love debate. Wouldn't it depend on audience and what they're looking to get to? When I took linear algebra the first time, I was doing the theory side of it, and I wanted the practical side of it for my computer science use, so I dropped and took it with the teacher was doing more TE. Yeah, that's true. It would depend on the audience, what they're looking for in certain circumstances. That's assuming you're talking about a kind of education that links directly to some sort of application, which is, I would say, the minority. Most link more to general applications. Certain sciences and stuff do. Math in general, though, is a TI thing at the top level. And this is the problem is that it's done in a TE way up until the top level. And that's not good for TI people. But at the top level, it's definitely a TI thing. It's basically proofs, conditional logics. I wonder if you'd find it accurate because one major thing they do is speak at an absurdly rapid fire pace. Yeah. And in fact, if you guys can all experience what it's like to spread and to what it means to go fast. Okay, so let me see if I have this document. I'll share it with everybody, and I'll demo it, and you can try it yourself. Real debate includes spreading, and spreading means actually, yeah. Open window. All right. All right. So I'm going to put a link here. Yeah, we can talk about that. We absolutely can talk about that. But first, I want to do this spreading demonstration. So that link I just put is to a document called The Open Window by a writer named Saki. There's a paragraph at the end of the first page that starts with "out through that window," a big long paragraph, okay? What I'm going to ask somebody to do is to please open up that document there and to time me. Put 30 seconds. I'll put 30 seconds on a timer here too, but you could try it yourself. I'm going to try to read that entire paragraph out in 30 seconds. This is a spreading test I use for kids, or spreading exercise I use for debaters, okay? So there's this paragraph that starts with "out through that window" and ends with "in through that window." And I'm going to try to read that whole paragraph in 30 seconds. The very fastest spreaders in debate can do that in 30 seconds. I can't quite do that in 30 seconds usually, but sometimes I can, depending if I really nail it. So I'm going to put 30 seconds on the clock, and I'm going to try to read that paragraph out loud. And then you can try it at home if you'd like and see how far you get through it in 30 seconds. So 30-second. Actually, I'm going to do this on. I can put the timer on my phone. It's going to be easier than doing it on a separate tab. So once again, for anybody who didn't hear it, I have to uninstall this app. For anybody who didn't hear it, I'm going to read that paragraph. Timer for 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. Starting.
Okay, I paused it. It's at 29 actually now. Ready? Here we go. Out through that window. Let me start again. 30 seconds. Out through that window 3 years ago to a day, her husband and her two young brothers went off for the day shooting. They never came back, and crossing the border, their favorite snipe shooting ground. They were all three engulfed in a treacherous piece of bug. It had been that dreadful wet summer, in places that were safe another year suddenly gave way without warning. Their bodies were never recovered. That was the dreadful part of it. Here, the child's voice lost its self-possession and became falteringly human. Poor out always thinks they will come back someday. They and their little brown spaniel that was lost with them and walking that window just as they used to do. That is why the window was kept open every evening. That's Porty around. She often told me how they went after her husband with his white waterproof coat over his arm, and Ronnie and her brother singing "Pretty White You Bound" as he always did to tease her because she said that got on her nerves. Sometimes in still quiet evenings like this, I almost get a creepy feeling that they were all walking through that window. Boom! Wow, you guys got lucky. That was I nailed it that time. I never nailed it like that. Now keep in mind, I have done that piece of writing as a flowing exercise many, many times. Okay, many times. And so if you think you're going to be able to pull it off in 30 seconds first time, no chance. But you could if you practiced it enough, especially if you're an NTP, because you got to be able to process language really quickly too. So anyway, that's spreading in debate. And you can practice it yourself. I did that last paragraph in that document. I'll put the link to it again in 30 seconds. So, that's part of why, of course, I have been drawn to rap, I guess, is I am a debater, and debaters have to be able to do that kind of a thing. So it makes one naturally think, hey, I could rap, I bet. The thing about rapping is it's scary at first because remember some guy claimed Eric was ESTP for that song he made with the sports car in the video. Florida's Natural? About the Florida's Natural song? Who would conclude that the Florida's Natural song is indicative of SE? That's crazy. Thanks, CJ. I appreciate it. Yeah, the thing is, if you've got any in the one or two, you can definitely become a rapper and rap successfully and well. But it's a scary thing to do because, I mean, the thing is, okay, let me address this thing here, Lamb. Like, this is the sort of thing that drives me insane about like the critique about Eminem. Well, he speaks, he raps about SE things or whatever. In that song, it goes, I got my hose, I got my guns, I got my gang, I got my clubs, I got my something. It's like it's a joke, obviously. It's making fun of that culture to a certain extent, and it's using it in a kind of a meta way and then it mixes in the mix of all of those sort of hip hoppy culture things. Another thing to sort of position it beside it to make it look cool too. Florida's Natural grapefruit juice. So it's a joke about that process of juxtaposing a product next to other lifestyle things to try to encourage you. Like if they were to try to get people to buy more Twinkies and link it to being fit, like they show a bunch of like mountain bikers stopping for a Twinkie. And then after that, they're playing basketball, and then they're skydiving, and then they're eating Twinkies the whole time. No, I never got the white coat. I haven't been able to go back there when it's open since. I keep driving by it, and all right, well, you know what? Hero Lamb, I want to make something very clear. Will B can have 0 of my bitches, and he's lucky I don't take all of his. Okay? You can tell him that. Did you hear what I said? Did you? So, given the fact that it is only through my general kindness and discretion that Lil B is keeping any of his bitches, why would you not afford me the status? I don't know. Lil B representing Berkeley. We may be representing Berkeley. That's fine. I'm representing Arcadia. The streets of Arcadia. The hard, gritty urban streets of Arcadia. The thing is, you got to practice letting go. That's what, if you want to, if you really want to rap, you have to practice letting. Look, you can think about rap as freestyling, like taijutsu. You think of yourself as Guy Sensei. You need to pull down the gates, the various gates, in order to allow the freestyling jutsus to come forth. We're accustomed to having gates up because obviously we want to not say the wrong thing, and we want to meh, and we want to make sure something is not just passable, but good. So, as like one possible way one could suggest that one could improve in rapping if one wanted to, would be to practice replacing words with sounds. So it's like practice not having an answer. Like, well, I'm rapping now, and I want to say a cow and chow pow pow dow blah blah blah. To get used to not having any words and just putting in sounds. Okay, well, listen. I too, okay, am reformed. I used to be a drunk. I'm an inspiring guy too, because I have all of Wolbe's bitches. Wolbe posts a lot on social media about motivation, how people should believe in themselves. Legendary man, a man of the people. Okay, well, good for him. Good for Wolbe. I'm proud of him. I think I will allow him to keep a few of his bitches. I tried to be good my whole life, and then my father died by killing himself with alcohol recently. So now I want to kill myself with alcohol. Why not? Zach Cooper, you just laid a big package of ontological meow on my desk here. Why not? You've got to understand that you have a duty, and that's not it. It's okay. No, it's important. It needs to be dealt with. That's the answer. You have a duty, and that's not it. And if you want to know what your duty is or why it's that duty and not some other, well, until you answer those questions definitively, that's your first job. Okay, duties aren't prescribed, they're conferred. Conferred by whom? It's implicit to your being. So it's implicit to being an agent that one has both will and accountability. There may be some things in life about which it would appear that you aren't accountable to anybody but yourself. Even when that's the winning argument is not the case. No, not by someone else's. The duty is not to other people. The duty is not to make other people happy. I'm not sure if I can stop you from anything I could possibly say that would impact you regarding the alcohol. But making that choice was turned to be the difference for me from being on that path, killing myself with alcohol, which I was planning to do, basically. Just, well, look, you've already fucked up your life. You've wasted it. Just finish it off. Just finish drinking. Bring yourself to death. And then I made the decision to accept that if there was some way I could be happier, fulfilled, even if I didn't like that way, I should do it. So why smoke weed? So marijuana is an entirely different different matter than alcohol. The reason alcohol is something that'll kill you is because of a number of reasons. One is poison; it's bad for your body. Two, it steals your time and your life. It's nothing you can do concurrently with other things. At least I never could. The only thing you can really do concurrently with alcohol is maybe play music, and then you play it worse. If you're the drinker you get, maybe gamble. You gamble worse than you get. Maybe have a party and hang out with people. Fine, but you can't get anything productive done, and you're not doing any meaningful work on the self. It's like you're trading in immediate oblivion for long-term well-being. And if you can make the choice to forsake alcohol, you can smoke as much weed as you want, you'll be fine. And like one of the reasons why I smoke so much weed is that it helps me to feel, like I'm getting something in exchange for giving up alcohol, or there's something to it's something to change my head a little bit, because I can't really sedate myself. The fact is, I'll never quite feel as wholly satisfied in some sense again in my life because I'm not going to have any alcohol. For me to really feel like relaxed. I mean, it's plausible. It's possible. It happens occasionally without alcohol. That means I probably haven't slept very much, and I get tired. I need to get exercise. I need to go like run and breathe really hard, and then maybe. But it's a challenge for me to feel that sense of release that alcohol gave me in any other way. But marijuana helps. It definitely does. Is long-term well-being even meaningful? Well, the thing is, Jack Hooper asks, is long-term well-being even meaningful? Either you make yourself happy with something you build up, which is what I made myself happy with for a long time. I mean, you need to have a destiny. You need to choose to believe in a destiny that I am destined to, and probably defer the specifics of what that destiny is exactly, or how you're going to get there exactly, to a grand observer, whatever you want to call it, that is the ultimate arbiter of good and evil, and that gives us a teleology. Everything in life we understand, except ourselves, is natively understood through a teleology, which is to say, what is its purpose? Who is purposing? How is it purposed? Why are we even attending to this? It has to have some sort of purpose. To earn our willful attention, something requires there's some purpose behind it, or else we wouldn't be willfully attending. In other words, there's always a question to why are you paying attention to that instead of something else? Except there's not a question to why do I exist instead of not exist. The answer that's literal is, well, because my parents my mom got pregnant with me. My dad shot his load in my mom. That's the most literal answer. But we want a more meaningful answer than that, because that just explains causally, like what caused us, but it doesn't explain the purpose. But why? Well, we could see ourselves as being purposed by our parents because, well, they wanted to have a kid and raise a kid. Okay, but I mean, that just makes me, once they're done raising me, I might as well just go die or something, because I've fulfilled my purpose. So that can't be. It has to be some sort of purpose beyond other people. I can't be purposed by another equal agent. My being can't be purposed by another equal agent like my parents. So we've got to, I guess, assume that given that everything is purposed in life, that human beings are purposed in some fashion as well. Even evolutionists have to justify their claims with purpose. They go, well, it's good for the genome, or it's good for the whatever. So Hobo Mojo asks, how would you be happy? How would you know how would you know how happy you'll be in the future? How do you know things aren't better than it is now? If so, long term doesn't matter. Well, because happiness is not the ultimate goal if you have some sort of destiny or purpose. If you're purposed for something, then unless you're purposed for happiness, and unless you're purposed specifically for immediate pleasure, then that's not what you should be pursuing. The way out of things is usually to go through them, even if it sucks. Remember that you're trapped by meanings, whichever meanings you choose to embrace. You're trapped by them. So to the extent that you can choose which meanings you can embrace in which context, then you're still trapped by them, but you're choosing it, and it becomes much more a tool and much less a constraint. How is a human-centered purpose more significant than a universal purpose? A human-centered purpose is almost always centered toward a reproduction of life. Well, because here's the thing, Zach Hooper. Right now, you're exploring the value of ontology via universal metrics, namely what's true, what these words mean, why these words are more important than those words, which statements ought to be afforded a status of true. Those are the sort of questions that you're dealing with specifically here. And yet you're saying, even though I'm clearly somebody who cares mostly about the metaphysics of the matter, namely the meanings that are attached to things, unless I can attain the primacy of meanings over experience through the meaning modality, then I refuse to accept that I myself might be more concerned about the meaning modalities, that I must therefore be more concerned about the human-centered purpose. Of course, you're mistaking an abstract question for a personal question. So it's like, on the one hand, there's an abstract question, which you're asking, which is, why would it be that humans need to have some sort of grand teleology? Why not just their own seeking of whatever? And the answer is because if we were just our own seeking of whatever, you wouldn't be asking that question. So, I mean, the fact that it's open for discussion, that it's possible one be destined for universal purposes rather than for fulfilling the interests of the self, is implicit in the nature of the way human beings are. It's why we have not just FITE, SE, and SI. We also have NE, NI, TI, and FE, because we are beings that exist concurrently as experiential animals and metaphysical beings. And so what does that mean? It means it's possible to spend your whole life seeking experiential pleasure, and that might be sort of satisfying for people who attend exclusively along those vectors. So it's like, if I'm a bros and hoes guy who goes down to the river with a jet ski and gets drunk and has orgies and all that kind of stuff, well, I'm pursuing fundamentally the experience of pleasure. If you're like me, I'm a person who's live streaming all the time. I find this enjoyable, but I'm not pursuing the experience of pleasure during the moment. I'm trying to establish the primacy of arguments, certain words over others. So obviously I choose to do this because I enjoy the experience, but the experience itself is not an experiential one. It's a time-based one, or cross-time one, turn-based one, turn-based, which is to say it's made out of words, not out of actions. If I go down to the river and get on the jet ski for 4 hours, I'm doing SE for 4 hours. If I get on the live stream and talk about meanings for 4 hours, I'm doing NE for 4 hours. Zach Hooper, you are obviously a metaphysical type if you're asking those kind of questions. And so when you ask how is human-centered purpose more significant than universal purpose, I would say it's not. A human being framed through a universal frame as having a destiny intended to somehow conform with the good, somehow conform with the following realities: 1, the universal good; 2, needs relating to the universal good in the status quo; 3, abilities you bring to the table; and 4, I forget what the fourth one is. Little fairy dust. I don't know. Your capacity to seek out and correctly determine what the slabs intend for you. You've got to be willing, in other words. You've got to be willing to seek out slab meanings that are definitive for you, that direct you and give you a sense of purpose in life. And you've got to be, what you have to battle along the way is going to be your disinterested calculus. You say, but this has been inadequately established according to my logical calculus. These words don't afford a real reason to justify the conclusions they're drawing. They always appeal to my individual interests, but they are arguing on as though they were a universal metric. Well, because that's the right way to do it. You're doing it backwards. Look, the storylines of our life happen for a reason. You think about it in terms of like synchronicity and stuff. Like, why are you here today asking this question and getting these answers? What do the slabs intend for me to do with this opportunity to respond, to create meaning? What meanings am I going to create about it? It's not a random event for me. It might be a random event for you. The reason it's not a random event for me is because it fits into an existing storyline that I'm telling about my destiny, what I'm intended to do, that infuses importance into many different things, but not everything. It requires me to employ a magical thinking frame that exists within a larger meta framework. What's predominant? It's hard to say. It's not really that kind of meta framework. So I try to make it contextually appropriate. In this instance, it's contextually appropriate for me to reference in responding to this my larger destiny story and my self-identification as an agent of righteousness, and clearly positioning myself on one side of the good-evil divide and against moral relativism and against nihilism of the sort that you are at risk for falling into. So, in other words, sometimes what's required is a demonstration of what faith is from somebody who's hard to dismiss if you're an NETI person, as I suspect you are. For what function does purpose stem from? I'm guessing FI or TI, values and solutions. Well, here's the thing. Like, individual purpose is very much a TE thing. So a perfect example of this is me correcting my dad about something he said, and he assuming or conflating that with an interested advocacy on my point, because he can't see really anything except through the notion of interest, goal attainment, status attainment, or whatever. So like when he said, well, we really can't do this anymore. We can't lift her. We can't do this. I corrected him and said, yeah, we can do that. I can do that. I can. Yeah, I believe you're an INTP too, Zach Cooper. I already, just because the first question you asked had me go, okay, this guy's an INTP. What was it saying? Something super gold and juicy. Oh yeah, purpose. So I was saying to him, no, Dad, it's not the case. I can lift her. I can still do that stuff if need be. And he wanted to interpret that as me wanting her to come back here and for me to do that to justify receiving the money that's currently being paid to the place over there or something. I was like, no, Dad, I'm not advocating anything of the sort. I'm correcting you. You said we can't do this anymore. It's not possible to do it anymore. And so I'm saying, okay, well, if you're making decisions right now and thinking through things based on that assumption is false. So you should correct it. You should say, we could do this still, Eric, you can still lift and blah, blah, blah. But I don't want to, which is what he really meant, right? That's what he meant. He meant, I don't want Mom here anymore. I don't like the responsibility. I don't like all the things it entails. And I prefer where it is. But he's TE, so he's not, he believes that there needs to be some sort of utilitarian justification for things, you know? It's a personal purpose that I must have some sort of personal purpose in correcting my dad on that point, that it necessarily serves a different side of the argument. Therefore, I'm interested in that side of the argument. That's a TEFI frame. In reality, I'm correcting him because he's wrong universally. It's like I checked against the facts. Is it in fact possible for us to do this? Yes, it is possible to do the lifting. I can do it. No problem with that. Therefore, I'm going to correct him because he's wrong. I would correct him if he was wrong, even if it was like, if I really wanted to. Well, okay, here's another example. I was talking about, what was it? Desert INTJ said something that was on the side of the position that I was arguing, but was not something I considered before. So I said, well, I'm not sure about that. It might be right. I have to think about that more. But regardless, I went back to the thing I said. So that thing was arguing on my side, and it was a good point, and it was one that could easily be correct. And maybe I will apply it myself if I think I remember what it was. But I hadn't thought it through yet. So even though it was on my side and appeared to be good and successful, I didn't include it in my argumentation at all because I wasn't sure about it yet. Now, also the case, if I'm arguing in favor of X and somebody else gives it a position that's arguing in favor of X, but they give a wrong reason, I will argue against that person because that is not why we do X. What matters is why we do X, not whether we do X. That's universal, okay? And so that's what purpose is about. It's saying it's important that we use words correctly. Means one of my purposes is to adjust the incorrectness of language use in the status quo towards something that's better, more correct, less wrong, and more conducive to communication success. We're never going to communicate successfully about public policy when both sides are spinning shit with bullshit language, you know? Call a thing what it is. Do not name it some bullshit name that spins it as something else, because if you do that, that just means you don't care about the universal. You don't care about whether it's true or not universally, or we're doing it right. You only care about whether you win, whether you get your way. But it shouldn't be like that about public policy, because it is all of us trying to decide together what the right thing to do is. So we need to treat each other respectfully and understand that our goal is the right course of action, not to be proved right in our existing beliefs. I need a break. I need to take a break. I'm going to pull this bomber up, and I'm going to stand over there and smoke a cigarette. I'm going to ask you guys politely, respectfully. I'm asking politely and respectfully, will you please? And I'm not going to ask it quite yet, but when I do ask it, I'll give you the indication. And what I'm going to ask is, will you please chat amongst yourselves, okay? So be prepared for that question to come up in a moment after I pull this bomber up. All right, so this is the thing, Bacon. I need to substantially update shit because one of the great things about Cloud, and I hope I don't like scare him away by kicking his ass or whatever, because he forces me to address some basic questions that I typically don't actually answer. And sometimes I think I should have really thought this through more. Actually, this part here, this question is revealing to me that I didn't think about this enough. So the good example was the SE being in the moment and NI and SI being something else than in the moment. Of course, that drives home the point that all attention occurs in the moment. I'm attending right now in the moment via extroverted intuition, which incorporates examples from my own personal experience and to justify and to otherwise link to meaning truths that I'm talking about, NI stuff. So I'm constantly going with my NE 454545, occasionally SE 8. But so if I'm prompted by, this picture of my daughter right here to say something like, what just happened there? So for example, to give an example of SE, actually get an example of SE, look around. There's the picture of my daughter. I'm talking about this now. I've been prompted by SE and I'm incorporating SE data into my NE stream. But by and large, I don't incorporate SE data. I incorporate NE data, which is what you guys put right there. And when I say NE data, what do I mean? I mean that your action has produced objects on the metaphysical flow. And those objects on the metaphysical flow are the product of extroverted intuition. Now, extroverted intuition puts out things that resonate in varying degrees with introverted intuition. Whether or not a given thing is introverted intuition is going to link to the context. So it's like each of us is, when we're talking about objects out on the external metaphysical field, we're talking about extroverted intuition objects. Introverted intuition objects would be on the internal metaphysical field, and I would have no access to them. Which is to say, the holistic understanding you have of a given thing is your own. You can express it in extroverted intuition objects, words onto the metaphysical field. To the extent that it's well executed, your NI is going to be correct about how this impacts my NI or my general way of being. And the reason is because NI is a universal knowing function. Now, obviously, there's no real, universal unconscious or whatever it was that Jung said, collective unconscious. That's not the case. There's no collective unconscious. It is the case, however, that human beings are hardwired to understand things archetypally, and that they build those archetypes that they understand out of those archetypes they experience in the world. That being in the world means encountering, metabolizing data, and then retaining aspects of that. Yeah, Bacon, that's the problem with that book at this point, is I understand a lot better now how to go about discussing this thing and where to start from. And I did a poor job in that. This is more of a compilation of ideas. I need a single document where I really go through and explain the whole thing. And I'm trying to, it's called Bookie Book right now as its working title, but I don't know, 8 or 9 pages into it. But I've got so many projects on the burner here. What I really need to do is just make a 10 or 20 minute video talking about fields, functions, directionalities, and purposes and stuff like that. I needed to make a picture. I have one somewhere actually, which shows what we're talking about. It's like, it's a person. There's an internal, and then a line across it: internal metaphysical, external metaphysical, internal physical, external physical. Is there really any moral difference between manifesting evil energies and good entities? Well, moral questions are always one of two kinds. They're either positive or negative moral questions. It's always wicked to violate negative moral indications or prohibitions. So, for example, okay, so All right, so first let me just say the negative and positive. If you violate somebody else's rights in a way, you violate somebody, then you're engaging in wickedness. It might also be the case that failure to act is wicked, but that is not a universal question. So when you say good and evil are to the universal observer, or only good and evil to the human observer, it's not really saying anything. You're saying good and evil only manifest where good and evil can possibly manifest. Well, that's true. And you're saying, well, how can it be universal then? Well, because it's about human observers, not just Joe or Zach or Eric. It's definitely the case that love is better than the absence of love. It's definitely the case that you felt loss when your father died. It's definitely the case that you had attachment to him. He had value to you. And that you're making meaning about purpose from it. You've had experiences and you're using your experiences as the thing to make meaning out of, just like I do. But you're making meaning right now about big questions, because the experience is a big question experience. When somebody dies, we make meaning out of life and death stuff, what it means to be mortal, what it means to be alive, what our purpose is, things like that. Those are the kind of questions we ask when somebody close to us dies. If somebody is very close to us who dies and they're very important to us, it can be not just one death, but two. Of course, for the person who remains behind who's alive, there are some burdens of some weight in the world that can only be relieved if you view it through the lens of serving a greater purpose, of being there to teach you or to guide you towards a more moral course or something like that. What's going on my phone? Just a moment. It's hilarious. Okay. So here's the thing. It's true that good and evil are only relevant questions for living creatures, for living agents. Good and evil is not a relevant question for a rock. Good and evil is not a relevant question for a stick. It may also be true that good and evil are only relevant questions for moral agents, namely human beings. It may be the case that some other animals have moral agency, like sea mammals, some of them appear to. But the fact that I need to go back and fix some shit. Absolutely, I do, Hambone. Maybe you and I can work together a little bit on that, if you're down. So the thing is this. Good and evil exists in our perspective, and we justify it usually with universal justifications. The basic notion of reciprocal burdens, that if it's okay for you to do something to me, then it's okay for me to do the same thing to you. There are various, like, I guess, justifications we have for assigning the status of wicked to a given behavior or to a given person. The idea of Christianity is that it's always possible to decouple the person and the behavior. In other words, that when a person does something wrong, if they follow that up with a certain process of seeking absolution, then they cease to be a bad person for having done that wrong thing and return to being a human being who's made a mistake. For those who persistently do bad things and don't ever seek absolution and don't ever seek to grow from it, then they incur the consequence of the statuses accordingly. Now, what does that mean to incur a status? Like, well, you incur the status of being wicked. Well, I mean, it only has real impact on the metaphysical side of things, particularly, probably, although there may be physical phenomena that occur accordingly. But remember, human beings are concurrently metaphysical beings of creatures and meanings and turn-based existence, and animal beings, physical beings that are not turn-based, that are real-time experiential kind of things that don't require any symbolic understanding. And they're both things concurrently. So if you are evil, you incur statuses that are very uncomfortable on the metaphysical plane. And that produces on the external physical world or on the external metaphysical plane, people treating you differently. Like people saying things differently to you and you feel constrained. You've got your own internal model of how life is. And now you've acted in ways that are indefensible universally. You've acted in ways that are wicked, which are going to incur people's wrath if they know about them. So you have to be all hidden in the shadows now, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what are the consequences for failing to uphold the duties associated with being a moral agent? It means you always go the wrong direction in life. The only way to go the right direction in life, in other words, to grow and to feel like you're a happy and fulfilled person, to have some understanding of a big picture that relieves the pain of short-term costs. It's like I had this terrible relationship with Kimberly, blah, blah, blah. And I have a choice what to do with it. Either I operate in a frame which says stuff happens for a reason, linked to a larger purpose or destiny, in which case those stories have certain meanings. Like I was with Kimberly so that I could learn what I needed to learn for various larger purposes. Or I cannot choose to frame it that way. And I end up saying, I just suffered because I was stupid. I guess now I'm a little less stupid, if that's any value. But, apparently from what I can tell, shit just happens. It's like, no fault of mine. I just fuck it. I don't know. I'm just unlucky. It's the same kind of storytelling. It's just stupid. It's just the stupid half of it. It's the dumb way to do it. Why tell that story? No matter what happens, you're going to tell some story that links to purpose or lack thereof. If you're saying everything's just random and I'm just floating in the breeze, then you're denying the reality that you have a will and that you can make things happen. You have agential power, that as an agent, your actions matter. You can make impacts. And if you're going to say, well, it may not be all random, but there's no larger purpose to it. There's no God. There's no, you live and then you die and that's it. Well, then it's like, if you're really going to embrace that storyline, then what follows from it? Okay, well then if that's the case, if it doesn't really matter whether I'm good or evil, if I'm nice or mean at all, in any larger sense, then what do I want to be? What if life is death's game in which it grows the things in which he intends to kill, and we all have some larger meaning? Whereas mostly it's all random. True. Okay, well, Thing is, Zach, the mistake about these sort of questions is the notion that one of them that it's the fundamental mistake that you're making is to treat these things as though they were positions rather than behaviors. You're choosing what behavior to engage in. Are you choosing to engage in a behavior of affirming assumption X and choosing to be predicated on assumption X? Or are you choosing the behavior where you have assumption B and you're predicating your existence on that? There's no third option of nothing. You don't get to choose zero. You have to choose one of a set of possible things or a series of a set of possible things in order to tell stories from. So if you want, the thing about it is, you say this, the story I'm telling is that we are just cows that are being grown by an entity named Death. And when we are fully mature, very old, he eats us. Then go ahead and embrace that narrative. But the fact that that's a narrative that's out there, that's possible, that would be supportable logically as an argument, as much as presumably any other story, is once again mistaking the kind of critique you need to use in this matter. Faith is a matter of interest. It's a matter of converting your interested self into a universal self. You choose what universal self you want to convert your magical thinking frame. You choose your magical thinking frame. And the nice thing about it is that it doesn't have to be justified like that. So in other words, because you don't have to justify your magical thinking frame definitionally with legitimate justifications, and you just get to choose it, you're responsible to choose wisely. Because after all, you're going to live with it. You're choosing the following frame. It's called relativism, or dissembling, or mistaking a category error. It's a category error. You're treating your magical thinking frame as though it were subsumed by your logical critique frame. But it's not, by definition. So it's like you're trying to skip out on your responsibility to choose a magical frame by appealing to your alternative frame that you're embracing and pretending it's not a frame. That's what's happening. So recognize your own magical frame as a magical frame and realize that you're choosing the one you want. I choose one that affords me purpose and destiny, course of action. I'm able to take on the mantle of white wizard, one pursuing the good, one certain of what the good is, one clear about one's moral agency and the responsibilities ensuing thereof, ensuing there too. The thing is, if I'm going to make those sort of claims, then I have to put to bed the fundamental question of, is there good and evil? Obviously there is from our experience. From a universal level of meaning, it's necessarily the case that is a criterion that exists in the metaphysical world, and it is normatively so that it's good that it does, because if we didn't have good and evil, we'd have to replace it with something else that demonstrated the following concept. What you did on the particularist level resonates as unacceptable on the universal level. We'd have to have some sort of word to convey that, because it is the case that some things that are done on a particularist level or experiential level resonate universally as wrong. So we need to define why, or at least come up with some sort of explanation as to what this indicates to us about a larger framework. What it indicates to me is that good and evil obviously exist, and that just because only some aspects of them universalize well doesn't mean we should forsake the reality in favor of our extremely strict map making requirements, which is what you're trying to do there. When INTP tries to get nihilistic or relativist, they're saying, I'm going to forcibly ignore reality in favor of the very, very strict requirements that you have to meet in order to make it onto my map. And so I'm going to map this whole area as unmapped territory because I don't like the imprecision of the technique the map maker is using to justify his drawings. Bad idea, because remember, you have to use the map. And when you use the map and you've chosen to leave everything as mush because you're not adequately convinced that the precision of the stuff put there is good enough to justify putting it there, then you still have to use the map. And you now have no guidance rather than iffy guidance. Mappity map, map, map. That whole little spiel there is my message to INTPs. It is, okay? That is my core message to all INTPs everywhere. Don't spiral into nihilism and relativism. There are things in life that don't need to be subsumed by your dominant function, TI. Not everything has to be logically supported in order to be of value. And in fact, certain kinds of modalities need to forsake TI logic, such as magical thinking. It's important to recognize that everybody incorporates magical thinking frames whether they want to or not. The difference between those who incorporate intelligently magical frames is that they recognize what they're doing as magical frames and incorporate them intentionally and have some sort of meta frame to explain why. Here's the alternatives. Alternative one is INTP type response to it, which is to believe they're not engaged in any magical thinking because they're refusing to define a given area as resolved at all and just mush it out with relativism. That somehow that's not for a form of magical thinking. Absolutely it is. It's just a refusal to embrace any specific magical thinking as a way of addressing as your magical thinking frame. I'll just ignore all this data. So see, I'm not a magical thinker. I'm just ignoring all the magic data. Okay, well, that's not a good thing. There is such data. You know, you can draw NI conclusions, make links and stories, and wow, that's really synchronicity. That's really a weird coincidence. Well, you can make those meanings, but you can't defend them logically. Doesn't mean they're worthless. You shouldn't throw them away because they're holistic. They're irreducible. Their value is implicit to the fact that they're wholes and not implicit to the fact that they're logically reducible. So why would you choose to forsake all that valuable data? This whole message here, for a while now, back up until now, is for INTPs. For people who otherwise say, Eric, you're being too wordy, you're being too dense, you're going too fast, or whatever, INTPs are all getting this just fine. They're following me just fine. In fact, they're probably way ahead of me. For the rest of you, just chill out. The conversation between me and INTPs. I'll be less wordy and fancy talk you soon enough. So I think INTPs who are watching this understand what I'm saying. Don't go relativistic. Don't go nihilism. Just because magical thinking is not a justification for things doesn't mean you shouldn't justify to yourself choosing to use it and keep it in its appropriate place. It's not contagious in the way you might fear. It doesn't sort of leak into everything and then pollute your ability to be logical. You can always apply TI logic just as clearly as ever and concede the spots where, yeah, that's where the logic ends. Like, yes, my magical thinking, people always want to tell me, okay, you're a Christian, so you believe in God, right? And my answer is, I don't affirm that position statement, but God exists, right? I don't affirm that position statement normally. Why would I? That'd be like saying, but your car can keep up with cars, and your horse can keep up with cars and traffic, right? If the traffic's not moving too fast. And I'd say, oh, I don't know. I never take the horse out into traffic. Why would I do that? Horses don't belong there. I don't have a horse because I need an alternate method of transportation to get to work on the same roads that I would take the car. I'm not saying like, this is a good mode of transportation to get to work. And then like atheists will say, but that's obviously not very good. I mean, look, the cars will run it over and it'll get very startled and blah, 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 blah. I'm not taking it to work. Dumb. Duh. I'm playing with my horse on the weekend in the forest or whatever. Sure, right. But do you understand what I'm saying? So what an email anthrax says right there, he's saying, I just told him I'm going to get a horse. And what he just said is, you can't put gasoline into a horse. Well, of course you can't. It's a horse. That doesn't mean horses are worthless. What's the difference between good and evil? Well, the thing about that is, we can define negative instances of wickedness as those that violate the rights of an individual. As far as positives is a different thing. So the absence of evil is not the same thing as good, and good is something that requires magical thinking to define. Okay, so if you want to, we can all agree for certain that people experience things as good and evil. People make those meanings and broadly agree about them. For example, people broadly agree the Holocaust was evil and not good, and so as a consequence, we know that people use those terms anyway. Now, the thing is, the reason it was evil is because it violated the rights of a bunch of people. That's not the same thing as explaining why winning World War II by the U.S. was good. Presumably the relief of persistent evils back into a state of neutrality is a good, but that would have to be established somehow, and it's a lot harder to establish. It's easy to establish that violating somebody's rights is evil. It's hard to establish that any given action is good. And so that's why we need magical thinking. What does the Bible have to do with anything, email anthrax? Again, I said, I'm getting a horse. Email anthrax says, getting a horse with artificial legs is bad. I'm not getting a horse with artificial legs. I agree getting a horse with artificial legs is bad. But horses should have real legs, obviously. Again, I said, I'm getting a horse. Email anthrax says, I can prove keeping a bunch of horses in a pen is bad. I'm not keeping a bunch of horses in a pen. I'm getting a horse. I agree, email anthrax. So this is the kind of response that the people who have faith done properly keep getting when they tell people they are a person of faith. Well, I'm a Christian, and I believe wholeheartedly in using a magical frame, namely Christianity, to provide the necessary, to fill that necessarily filled spot where magical frame goes. Everybody fills it, remember. You can only choose to fill it wisely or poorly. That's it. So I tell people, well, yeah, I've chosen to fill that magical frame with Christianity. They assume all sorts of crazy nonsense because I fill that magical frame slot with Christianity, that in my argumentationally defensible area of argumentation, that I defend the statement that God exists. That's crazy. Why would I? That's insane. It's like saying, don't just make sure your antifreeze works well in the car. It needs to taste good too. No, that's stupid. It needs to do what it needs to do. You know, the magical frame slot of the ontology will be filled by something. It'll either be filled by something based on ignorance, that is to say, not actively attending to it and being willfully creative with the process or engaged in the process or being fair, logical, or disinterested in the process. It'll be filled with whatever, you know. So, you know, there's no reason to bash my Christianity at all. Why would you bash it? What's there to bash? I believe humans are people who are prone to sin, that they are forgiven for that sin to the extent that they are accountable for it, and that nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes, and that we each have a destiny to fulfill, to be good to be good moral agents in the world and create good action, but we can't know what what positive actions are good without God. That's my position on the matter. Why would anybody bash that position? After all, what comes first are the questions we know without God, namely what we can't do. That always comes first as a question in terms of the order of operations. The first question is check a given prospective action against the negative moral prohibitions. If it violates those, then we don't do it, period. We don't even have to go any further. Then we can check and see but to decide what we then should do based on what we can do is a matter we need to engage magically with. We can't know with logic that. And that's part of the reality of being one of those double kind of creatures that's physical, metaphysical, that's both has negative obligations, which are easily defensible metaphysically, and it's got positive obligations in the physical world that aren't defensible metaphysically, at least not universally, that have to be defended universally through a magical thinking frame, which is how individuals are able to convert the physical realities into metaphysical teleologies that they need in order to operate, which will necessarily, again, be provided by something, no matter how dumb a replacement thing it might be, how much less preferable to the one that's desirable, which is the one I'm indicating. So Sarah ICP says, no matter what you believe, you should respect others. And that's hard to dispute. What does respecting others mean? Well, it means not violating their negative rights, first and foremost. And in that sense, most people agree from their own personal perspective. If they're talking about their own action, they will mostly agree that they ought not, for example, stab that person or punch that person in the face or steal from that person or whatever. It's only when we start talking about big policy issues that people throw aside questions of rights in general. All negative rights follow from the basic principle that you were born owning your own body. Now, if you want to dispute that principle, if you want to dispute that fact, then you're basically saying, I think given the fact that we have to take some position on that question, we either take the pro-slavery position, might makes right, or we take some alternate position regarding morality. If we take the position that you do own your own body, then all negative rights follow from that. Logically. But if you want to argue the position that you don't own your own body, then in the status quo, we assume people do, because slavery is not permissible morally. So if you want to dispute the idea that slavery is permissible morally, then you could do that, but fundamentally be stuck with arguing that whoever's most powerful, whatever they want to do, that's the moral standard. Moral standards are obviously clearly different from descriptive standards because we can draw the distinction. We weren't able to draw if it didn't exist, we wouldn't be able to draw the distinction. Everything we disagree, secular objective morality is possible. I think the negative rights thing is secular objective morality. That's secular objective morality. And it's perfectly fine. It's great. It works great. But secular objective positive morality is not. In other words, you can objectively know what not to do in terms of what's wicked and what's not. You cannot objectively know what to do in terms of what's wicked and what's not. It's very possible. You can know for sure that you shouldn't go hit the person who's asking for money in the street with your car. You shouldn't willfully run him over. Okay, that's pretty easy to know. Should you give him money when he's asking for it? I had this moment yesterday where I wasn't sure what I should do. Somebody was asking for money. They were at the stoplight. I almost reached into my wallet and got some. And then I sort of recalled that, God, I've seen so many goddamn homeless people around here, and they're just camping everywhere. And I don't want to give them any of them any money. I don't want to encourage them. But of course, that brings me to the next question. Is talk about speculating in the car. But then, so let's say nobody gives them anything, and they go somewhere else. Well, then there's somebody else's problem that doesn't solve the problem. Or let's say nobody anywhere gives them anything. Then what happens? Well, they go live in the mountains and forage or something. Which brings me to the point that this problem is a societal problem that needs to be solved. Self-destruction is giving up of rights and beliefs. So it is the case that destroying yourself is legitimate on a negative rights framework. on a secular morality framework. It's legitimate to kill yourself because it's your body. You can do with it as you wish. Well, that's why another reason why we ought to know whether we can prove or conclusively decide or whatever. We ought to know that there is a universal observer who loves us and wants us to be happy. It's and doesn't want that, and that you are failing to fulfill your intended destiny if you do that. You're presuming your own will above God's. Kind of a heavy topic, huh? I'm glad to see some of the numbers going up around here a little bit on the live stream attendees. What if you believe Santa Claus is real? Suddenly you get coal in your stockings at Christmas. You're going to believe you're a bad person, accept it, or would you question Santa Claus? I mean, I don't think God works like Santa Claus. I mean, I don't think God gives us things when we're good and hurts us when we're bad. I think it's implicit to the way things are. Again, you're mistaking. Look, you're putting the horse before the cart. I mean, you're putting the cart before the horse. Why do you believe Santa Claus is real? Is the question. For what purpose do you believe that? And that's the thing you're not answering or addressing. You have a purpose. What purpose do you believe your atheism? For what purpose? Okay, so but look, you question everything, but you affirm and negate certain things. So for what purpose do you negate magical thinking? There's a purpose for it. Look, every speech act has a locutionary and illocutionary frame. In other words, the meaning of the words you say is locutionary. So they mean specific things and they don't mean other things. The illocutionary frame is the reasons why you said those words that's not associated with what those words say. So, for example, when you say, I question everything, your point is both descriptive, that you're saying, I use TI on everything. And it's also normative in a sense. It's like good to be skeptical. It's good not to believe things that are wrong or be gullible. Implicit in behind all this is that sort of stuff. But the illocutionary reason why you say it is because the thing is every statement or every verbal act has an illocutionary inherent behind it, which is I believe. So when you make a statement, it's the same thing as if you made that same statement with the words I believe in front of it. So, okay, well then that's not a position, email Anthrax. So in other words, it's not a negation. It's a separate position. I guess the best way to put it. When you're saying you're agnostic, you're still saying the same thing that atheists are saying. You're saying that this is a question that needs to be judged by a metric that we use for non-magical thinking. You're ignoring the fact this is a magical thinking modality. And so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You've got a gas detecting deedly dad machine that what it says, it smells for natural gas leaks. Okay. A gas detector. And you're going up to this nuclear weapon and you're going, nothing. This isn't radioactive. It isn't radioactive at all. You're not measuring radioactivity with your thing here. You're measuring gas. And you keep using that same measuring stick and going, see, it doesn't validate on this metric, 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 on this metric. It's not the thing you use that machine on. You don't, of course not. It's a category error. So what I'm saying is everybody has a magical thinking slot in their ontology that gets filled with something. Yours is filled with what I would call imbuing the ineffable into the parsing process. In other words, you've mistaken the parsing process itself for an ontological frame rather than a tool of ontology. This is most commonly manifest in INTPs who mistake their dominant function for an ontological frame. Now, any may be my ontological frame, but it's not an ontological frame, which is to say, it doesn't address the fundamental question of my being. It's an expression or manifestation or instantiation of being. It's not an answer to the question of, it doesn't address the question of why that being exists at all. For that, you need your magical thinking frame. You can't move forward in argumentation on a lot of points without resolving that substantial issue. And so if you're not willing to be brave about your own rationality, that is to say, to set it aside and learn to operate, it's like Sasuke and Naruto. But at the end of the day, to be fully realized, they need to work together, even though they don't seem to go together at all. Ontological. Okay, so when I'm saying something's ontological, I'm saying it's about a person's being rather than, say, their behavior, their words, or their positions, their values, or whatever. So a value would be an ontological attribute. If normally I value, let's say, logical consistency, or I mean, the thing is, in practice, I value TI as much as anybody, which is to say, I really want to parse things out and get to the bottom of it. But in that sense, that would be a description of an ontological description of me. Whereas if you said, I went to the store today, that would be a behavioral description of me. Or if you were to say, he seems like a happy, he seems like he's happy most of the time. Well, that would be an affect description. So we can talk about different ways of talking about people according to what part of the thing it is. One of the problems I always had with Kimberly in my previous relationship is she didn't critique behaviorally. She critiqued ontologically. She didn't say, I don't like the way you said this, Eric. She said, you're always saying this, and you're someone who does this, and you are rather than you did. Okay. Does that explain it? So when I'm saying an ontological frame then within you is saying an ontological frame is one that says, who am I? But in particular, there's a question that needs to be answered that agnostics avoid answering, or answer with what is basically saying, I'm better off without any clarity on this frame than with any clarity on this frame, because it doesn't validate under my master frame, namely TI. Because in that state, you have a master frame, but you don't have a meta frame. Anyway, hopefully that explains everything. In other words, the ontological issue is one where you say, I know who I am by how I be. And I be by parsing out logically. I mean, what you should be saying is, I know why I am, and everything follows from that. God needed an ENTP at the time. in what way am I in that side of the mind sometimes? See, this is a misunderstanding the nature of personality. Okay, so look, I'm taking action right now by speaking. You have a clear, you receive the objects of my extroverted intuition, namely the words that come out of my mouth. You receive them. And when you're saying I'm in that side of the mind, so are you describing a behavior of mine? Are you describing a process? Are you describing objects that I produce, like the words that I say? Are you describing a value, something ontological you think is implicit to me? You need to understand, oh, okay. I can't tell sarcasm and stuff. You can't tell tone in these things. My bad. I can really go at length here to explain how I feel. Go for it. I mean, the point is, email anthrax, it sounds to me as though you want to push aside from making an affirmation. You want to reject the idea that you have to make an affirmation. In general, TI types are pro-negation and anti-affirmation. In other words, whether you're an ENTP or an INTP, you're going to spend a lot more time telling people how they're wrong than you are how they're right. You're going to spend a lot more time figuring out how people are wrong than you are figuring how you can use the aspects of what they say that are correct. Because ultimately, you are testing to show defensibility and not utility. So, I mean, two types can't compete for prominence in an individual is because by default, when I'm bored or don't know what I'm going to be doing right this second, what do? I open up the live stream and start live streaming. Now it's 2 hours later, I'm still live streaming. It's something I do day after day. I've been doing this sort of stuff for years. So what does that tell you? It tells you this is a area where I'm very comfortable. Also, I'm very practiced at it. Now, forgetting the issue of wanting to or why for a second, I'm not just practiced at it because I've been here on YouTube talking a lot. I'm practiced about it because before YouTube, I did as much of the real world equivalent as I could. And the reason is because this is who I am. Now, it might be the case if some circumstance asks me or pushes me in some sort of traumatic moment into a different type, quote unquote. I can't be a different type because if I go to just like this, here's how you know for a fact a person can't be a different type because of trauma or something. No matter how much I traumatize an ISFP, ISTP, INFJ, maybe even, or maybe even ENFJ, but certainly like ESTJ. No matter how much I traumatize an ENTJ, no matter how much I traumatize an ISFP or ISTP, I got to traumatize them into rapping, to freestyle rapping. It's a ridiculous notion. I can't traumatize an ENFP into having excellent conditional logic all of a sudden. When we talk about those notions, they're ridiculous. Obviously, you can't have competition between two types for prominence in an individual. For example, now he's in his shadow side of this or whatever. Oh, so now all of a sudden he can do conditional logic that he's never been able to do before. And if you would actually test on it, he wouldn't be able to. If that's true, then you need to find a moment where an ESFP who's completely incompetent about any kind of conditional logic, or an ENFP who's completely incompetent about it, all of a sudden can pass a very difficult logic test very quickly during this period of time because they're in their shadow self. And then once again, shortly after that, go back to being completely incompetent at it. If you can show me an example of something like that, then I'll believe it's possible to do this kind of bullshit that people keep talking about being in your shadow type or being in your meow or around. When you try to do things that you can actually test as skills, it becomes immediately obvious that that's complete bullshit. There's no moment when Sarah ISFP all of a sudden starts freestyling for an hour and just killing it, and then all of a sudden loses the capacity to do it again. No, it doesn't work like that. Obviously. You can traumatize an ISTP into having ideas, apparently, with Eminem. Well, Eminem is not an ISTP. If you think he is, you don't understand extroverted intuition at all. You need to watch my mic drop moment. Okay, so basically, if you think Eminem is an ISTP, then you must believe that he does not freestyle and is a bad freestyler, which I've heard from people. He's not really freestyling. Come on now. Do you really think Eminem's a bad freestyler? I don't think so. It makes no more sense that Eminem would be an ISTP who became what he is than if I had become an ISTP. Like all of a sudden, instead of talking all the time, I wasn't talking at all. And I was just doing shit all the time, being super effective. It's easier to imagine with talking and doing shit. It's obviously ridiculous when we compare it to when we use TI or any with somebody who's got the polar that's obviously if TI is solving the conditional logic problems really quickly, then it's not possible for somebody who's got TI polar to ever manifest that capacity. And I'm sure in some model there, the shadow or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I did debate Taylor about it. I did. I have the video, but I have to edit it. The thing is this. I'm not saying it's impossible to conceive of an ISTP learning to freestyle. I say it's impossible to consider an ISTP devoting his life to something he's naturally terrible at, especially when there's so many other things an ISTP would be better at naturally in that environment that he could be good at. So it's like if I were Eminem and I were an ISTP growing up in that environment and being forced to find some way to achieve, I would be in sports. I would, build cars, or I would do any of the things ISTPs do. I wouldn't take up freestyle rapping and be immediately good at it. That's the other thing. One of the things Eminem says in an interview is right away when he started doing it, he knew he was immediately good at it. He had natural talent for it. So even if you're going to argue that ISTP could possibly get that good at it, you could not possibly argue they have a natural talent at it unless you want to subsume the entire idea of extroverted intuition under extroverted sensing, as Taylor tried to do by saying because it has a beat, it's extroverted sensing. Not true. Doesn't make any sense. What is extroverted intuition then? INTPs can be good at freestyling. They need to practice it. It's scary for them because they're FE4th and they're particularly sensitive in that area, so they don't even want to take any chances. And they can tell whether it's like, when you first start practicing it, you're shitty at it. And it sounds gay. Gaff, sorry. There may be ISTP rappers, plenty of them. I don't doubt that that's possible, but I can tell you what they don't have. They don't have incredibly clever lyrics with lots of wordplay and incredibly successful stories and stuff like that. Eminem is an intuitive. There's never been a censor who could possibly dream of doing what he does. Period. I'm not absolutely certain about ENTP. I could believe INTP. He certainly seems introverted in his interviews. I could believe ENFP, at least. He's got an E, I cannot believe anybody who is sane or knows anything about extroverted intuition or of what it means to be a creative genius can conceivably dream of Eminem being an ISTP. It means you know nothing about cognitive functions at all, or nothing about extroverted intuition, or dismiss it as something that's it's cheap and easy. There's nothing cheap and easy about being an extroverted intuitor. My tricks are real. Watch the mic drop moment. That's extroverted intuition. Period. You can't do that shit on the fly. You can't improvise that shit on the fly without being an extroverted intuitor. You cannot do it. So if you want to claim that Eminem is not an intuitive, you are claiming he's a terrible freestyler. If you want to claim that, go ahead. You go ahead and tell me that Eminem is a bad freestyler. But Eminem has extroverted intuition in the 1 or 2 slot, period. That's bullshit stuff, Ethan. That's not meaningful. That's not a meaningful distinction. I'm done. For some reason, this topic pisses me off. It's like People have no fucking concept what extroverted intuition is. Try to dismiss it by saying that people who are censors can do it, but none of them can. You watch this fucking mic drop. You watch this. This is why I say all you fucking censors out there who think you can pull this shit off. You can't. Ever. In a million fucking years. If you think Eminem's a censor, you're fucking wrong. No censor in history has ever been able to do what Eminem can do. What I can do. As well. So, no. The day any censor is able to pull this shit off is the day the universe explodes. It's pointless to answer the question because you don't know what you're asking. Intuition moment. Intuition. What will qualify as a moment? So, all right, fine. Cloud says, well, what would an any moment look like? What would an any moment look like? This, and I demonstrate what an any moment would look like. Now, you tell me, how many moments does Eminem have that are any versus not? What's he doing with his time? So much confusion. Generating ideas and rhymes and stuff. Intuition. Shit kind of confusion about what it is. Cloud seems to think because I talk and use things I know from before that it's not extroverted intuition. That's because he doesn't understand the goddamn thing. Mm-hmm. Extroverted intuition is talking shit out all of the way, all the possibilities, a lot of them spread out in front of me. See? And yet I haven't prepared a thing. Gee whiz, yet I'm using information I once had before. Does that mean I'm not extrovertedly or what? Am I SIing right now? Because I remember how to speak from before? Wow, that's not really SI now, is it? If in fact I were to be SI, it would sound something like something that I wouldn't be doing now. I wouldn't be rapping certain words and how you think this is accomplished anyhow. If it's not extroverted intuition, what is it? And if it is, why can't I do it so damn well? Is it some sort of special spell that I cast on myself when I'm ISFJ so I can go to hell and back and learn rapping while I'm in hell on the way back? I'll attack, win a rap battle, then I'll get back into the sack with lots of rap girls in their bikini stacked up with their boobs and their butts in behind, and they're drinking lots of water and they're drinking lots of wine and they're sucking on my pole and they're sucking on your spine. Cause Cloud, you stupid man. What the fuck do you think the answer? You do this? I don't think so, man. No, because you're an extroverted Sam, not an extroverted intuition man like me. So you'll note in that freestyle, I reference rap girls with big boobs and big butts, and they're drinking wine and they're sucking on my pole and so forth. Oh, does that make me an extroverted censor? No. Obviously not. It makes me referencing the extrovertedly intuited metaphysical objects that represent hip-hop's milieu. Naturally, I'm gonna access those because I'm accessing both SI and NI concurrently because I'm an ENTP. Now, it is not the case that anything about Eminem except for the interviews is at all suggestive. If you're looking just at the body of work, there's nothing about it that's suggestive of him being an extroverted censor in terms of the creative process and the creative output. If you're talking about the themes within the work, like, well, he talks about SE things. Everybody talks about SE things. I talk about SE things too. SE things aren't things. Like the fact that he's talking about kicking someone's ass and telling his story about being so like powerful and violent and whatever, criminal, robbing a bank, stuff like that, shooting puppies, shit like that, doesn't mean he's extroverted sensing. It means he's extroverted intuition because he's not doing those things. He's rapping about them. The only kind of extroverted sensing rappers there are like Drake, people who suck ass.
yourself this question too. If you knew nothing about Eminem at all, except his body of work, just got to read all the lyrics of it, didn't even get to listen to the songs, what would you conclude about this person who made all those words? Would you say that seems like, just looking at the words itself, knowing nothing else about him, that seems like the work of an expert censor, or it seems like the work of an expert intuitor, somebody who produces a large amount of writing as a body of work? What would you think if you had no other information about it? You conclude he was an expert intuitor, obviously, or you not understand cognitive functions at all.
I mean, that's not true, Hobo's Mojo. TI users can't be debated successfully if and only if and when they understand they can be, and frequently enough are wrong, can see it when it happens, and adjust accordingly. That's the only reason it's very difficult to debate me, is because I don't have any attachment to my positions, and it's not the case. It's absolutely not the case that I don't believe I can be wrong. In fact, the reason why it's so difficult to debate me is because I'm so willing to believe I'm wrong. I'm so willing to accept things that are true, that don't side with me, and then adjust accordingly. So that makes it very difficult to debate with me, because like if somebody were to say something that were correct that disagreed with me, I immediately incorporate it or shift or ditch some of my own shit accordingly, you know? And so at this point, it's pretty difficult to find spots to defeat me about, because I am so honest. And that's what it really means, being intellectually honest. Upload what video? The ISDP debate thing? I mean, no, he kept running afoul of the same thing. He kept having to claim basically that ISDPs can master their polar, or he had to claim that, you know, writing, ideation, wordplay, and stuff wasn't an extroverted intuition. It's obviously not the case you can master your polar. It's like imagining that, ESFP can suddenly be, with enough hard work, can become the world's greatest logician. It's not just that that Eminem is a rapper. He's like the best rapper, the most intuitively resonant rapper, the one who doesn't just rhyme words, but tell stories and really really, I mean, he's got that third slot FE thing on point, you know. The notion that he could possibly be an ISTP it causes me despair because it shows how very, very little people really understand about extroverted intuition, you know? Well, email effect, I do the best I can. I'm a human being too. I get frustrated, especially with stuff like that. Like, do I want to argue whether Eminem's an ISTP? No. If you think Eminem's an ISTP, you don't understand what extroverted intuition is. And then what we really need to have an argument about is, what is extroverted intuition? If we're looking at the objects, we should agree right now that we can look at objects like the rap lyrics of Lose Yourself, for example, and agree, okay, based just on these objects, the most likely conclusion for sure is that we're dealing with an intuitive, either NI or NE high up for sure. Probably first slot. Those are extremely intuitive lyrics for all of this shit. It's very intuitively resonant. What intuitives do. When somebody tells me an ISTP or an ISFP did that, and you look at the body where you see all those words and all the wordplay and all the interreferential shit and all the creativity, and somebody tells me that an ISTP or an ISFP did that, it means they have absolutely no respect for who I am because they don't understand it at all. They're not talking about me, they're talking about Eminem, but they're talking about work product that is so clearly the produce of extroverted intuition, and they're talking about it as though it were extroverted sensing. It's like, it's basically telling me, you're so cheap and easy, Eric, that an ISTP can be better at what you do than you do it yourself with less practice, just by being focused. Well, that's just not true. You know, there's zero chance that any ISTP could ever produce that kind of ideational robustness. And if you think that it's possible, then you don't have any respect for what I do, who I am, how I be, you know? You don't have any respect for it at all because you think that somebody who's polar is my dominant can, just by applying themselves, master imitating what it would be like to have dominant extroverted intuition so well that despite it being their blind spot, they become the most demonstrably good at it of anybody in that field in history. That's just fucking crazy. I mean, no, look, this is the thing. SE is meh. NE is meh. Like, we need to stop that fucking garbage. When I extrovertedly intuit, I am talking out loud. Talking and extroverted intuition are almost the same thing. Talking out loud, okay? The reason it's spoken out loud onto the external metaphysical field is because the fourth slot SI means I don't remember it well enough to do it all in my head, unlike INTPs who do. FE third slot means I'm extrovertedly intuited in performance-oriented ways. SE is not performance. What am I doing right now? I'm performing. Why? Because it's an action that produces good results in extroverted feeling. Might ESTPs perform as well? Yes. Are they going to perform like this? No. That's why Taylor doesn't live stream nearly as much as I do. It's also why when Taylor live streams, he almost always has a partner there. He doesn't just live stream by himself. Because his head is not full, bursting with ideas that are waiting to come out and have been waiting because he hasn't been live streaming for a couple of hours and have built up in his head and need to get out because they're not going to be remembered because the fourth slot SI. Because that's not him. He's not an extroverted intuitor. Yes, extroverted intuition equals talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. On the other hand, there's also this possibility, which makes me segue into the fact that now that I mentioned that possibility, I should cover this area over here. That's extroverted intuition unleashed without any constraint by extroverted feeling. When it just goes endlessly spirals into segues and endless diversions and stuff like that. That's ENFP, NE on a live stream, not constrained by extroverted feeling, not caring about
whether the other people's experience of it is good or not. So, you would say that an extroverted sensor, in general, is going to be the superior performer when it comes to performing in things like sports or physical acting things, stuntmen, fights, acting on an availability when it comes to a lady or a man or all sorts of things. You would agree that in terms of performance, the SE Dom has the advantage because that's their dominant nature to take action on that field in that way. If you were saying Eminem is an ISTP, you were also saying that extroverted sensors have dominance on the extroverted intuition field, the external metaphysical field. You're saying that not only is it possible now you could say, well, an ENTP could go be a great performer on the extroverted metaphysical field. That's true. And I think like somebody like Andrew Luck is. And in certain specialized circumstances, of course. And also in certain specialized circumstances on the external metaphysical field as well. But that doesn't mean that, say, an INTP is going to be successful at all the various things of SE, of all the various nuances of SE. So it's like, it's conceivable that an INTP or something would be good at pole vault or at rowing or something that requires very little extroverted sensing decision making and just requires execution. But it's impossible to imagine them being very good at something that requires lots of ninja like parkour or something. No way. And certainly not being the world's greatest at it. So the thing is, you're trying to say the equivalent thing here on the extroverted intuition plane. Is it possible that an ISP could come up with some raps? Yeah. Is it possible that they would be remarkably good, clever, have all the various qualities that Eminem's body of work does? No, of course not. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We have, for extroverted intuition, a clearer way to distinguish it from other things. So in other words, if somebody's generating a shit ton of language work, and a lot of it's very clever, insightful, a lot of jokes, a lot of references, a lot of extroverted feeling-ish stuff, and it's very intuitive, we can be pretty damn sure you're dealing with the work of an extroverted intuitor. It's hard to imitate. If you're a sensor, you probably can't do it. No matter how well you want to try to imitate it, you can't do it. Now, I will agree that if you watch Eminem interviews, you're going to conclude he's not an ENTP. I don't dispute that. My position on that is he has a very constrained, his public persona has been very much constrained by FE and being in hip hop. But if you want to base your typing on him just on the interviews and what he looked like in the interviews, then you're going to conclude he's not an ENTP and you're going to conclude he's probably an SE user. I'm saying I would prefer to type him on his body of work because he can game the interviews. He can't game the body of work. He can't game the decades worth of incredibly successful work that the sort that requires to be incredibly successful at it, extroverted intuition. So I think that's a more reliable indicator. It's like saying that the best logician in the world is T.I. Polar. It's just not conceivably possible. All right. I got a split. Yeah, the topic depresses me. It does, because it's like people don't get it. People have no idea, and they don't appreciate. I mean, it's true across the board. People don't appreciate each other's modalities. It's a shame because, in general, I recognize what SE brings to the table. SE doesn't operate in the same way. It's just an analyst and a meta-analyst. Like, Taylor was going into that conversation yesterday, determined to argue his position. I was going in determined to work together to find the correct conclusion. And I was doing dialectic, he was doing rhetoric. I got frustrated at the end because he was just assembling. I was saying, okay, but then what's this? And he just scrambling, trying to win the argument. I'm not interested in those kind of fights anymore. It's like, I'm interested in dialectic. I did a good meta-analysis here, and I don't want to be dragged down into analytics like that. It's dumb. Like Snoop Dogg, it's like I wouldn't call him ISTP. I'd say probably
I could imagine Snoop Dogg being a rapper who is has weak NE somewhere, SE probably something in the mix. I wouldn't say any polar still, but like he's not very creative or interesting in what he's saying in general, right? It's sort of a style thing. He has some good lines here and there. He's at his best when he drops a line or two here and there and does it in his style. And I'd believe ESFP for Snoop for sure. I'd believe, I don't know. I'm not sure. He's SE. I believe ESTP maybe. Regardless, he's not any, and you can tell the difference very easily. Eminem is definitely extroverted intuition. The intuitive quality of everything is clear as day, whereas Snoop's obviously not intuitive. Drake, not intuitive. A lot of rappers are not intuitive. The good ones all are. The best of them. I mean, Snoop's pretty damn good. I like some shit Snoop does is great. But by and large, all the good rappers are intuitive. All right, I gotta go. I'm tired of fighting on this point. I don't like it. Am I gonna upload that video when I get around to it? Yeah, I'll do it. I'll edit it. Sure, emailed Anthrax. As long as they're about the Lord Jesus Christ, okay? I only listen to Christian raps. I'm not censorphobic. I'm tired of censors. I'm tired of this particular thing. Like SE people trying to lay claim to any bullshit. No. No, sir. Huh. Well, you won't have to hear it much longer. Yeah, he's a dickwad. Is he talking to you? Anyway, I'm done here, and I'll chat with you. I'll chat with you shortly. Is he talking to you right now, or what? No, sure. Yeah, I'll take them. If you want to share them with me, sure. You want me to put down a beat and send it to you, and you rap over it and send it back to me? How about that? I could do that if you want to do that. I could do that if you want to do that. I think Andrew Luck is an ENTP, but he could be an ISTJ. I don't know. I think the reason, when you say he's super focused on his body, yeah, that's true. The thing is, what type can't handle the SI strains? Could be ISTJ doesn't like them substantially, recognizes the significance of them. Could be ENTP who also can't handle the discomfort. He can't handle the SI discomfort if you're ENTP. It's like, I can't play this anymore because I'm always hurting a little bit, and I don't like that at all. So anyway, let's get some drums and wrap this stream up. I'm the only, okay, we'll wrap it up with a rap, I guess. I'm going to slow rap, though, okay? I'm going to play slow rap. Slow rap Magoo, as they say. I don't know if you're familiar with that expression or not. Good old Slow Rap Magoo is here. You know him. Slow Rap Magoo. I'm going to make a request. I would like everybody to please lift their hands into the air and raise the roof. Yes, now raise the roof. I have a request. I'd like everybody to take their hands and raise them up in the air and raise the roof. Come on, raise the roof. Now let's start doing our aerobics, friends. We'll put our hands together again in a clappy motion in time with the beat of the ocean. Put your hands up in the air. Raise the roof. Put your hands up in the air. Raise the roof. Yes, okay, good, great. Glad to see you're all here. I want to welcome you all to Rapping Yoga and Organic Eating Lessons. Today, we are going to be practicing some important yoga stances, and we're going to be doing it in a way that's fun and exciting and new. We're going to be rapping about it today, okay?
So I want everybody to just find their left arm here. We're going to stretch it out. That's right, stretch it out. Are you ready? Let's rap about stretching. Stretching is a super good thing to do before you should begin your exercise routine. It's time to stretch. That's right, Justine. Now stretch. Now stretch. Okay, great. Now stretch. Doing great. One more. Now stretch. Okay. Now shake it off. Here we go. We're going to go to the other side now. We're going to stretch on the right. Raise that arm up. We're going to half raise the roof. That's what I call it, okay? And we're going to rap about stretching. Here we go. We're stretching the other direction. So we don't just stretch half ourselves. We stretch the whole self. That's our health. That way we can be real healthy. We don't have to worry about pulling a tendon. Nobody likes to pull a tendon. That's why we're stretching. Good job there, Brendan. Okay, shake it off. Here we go. Now we stretch the top side, so time for us to roll our neck. Make sure our neck is nice and stretched. How are we going to do it? We're going to follow me and rap along with me, see? And then we'll have our neck stretched out. Whee! Here we go. A 1, 2, 3. Rolling the neck. Rolling the neck. It's like strolling down the park with a baby stroller. Heck, it's fun and good. It stretches my neck. It makes me feel like my neck is wrecked. Not wrecked, I mean. Improves it instead. Makes it feel better. Improves my head. Makes my head sit on top of my shoulders. Makes my neck feel bolder. Now stop. Okay. Good. We got the whole top half all stretched out. We're ready for some more. Ready? Now you're going to take your legs. So take your leg and put it behind your head. Put it back there. Sit on the bed. Get your other leg. Put it behind your head. Put it up there and sit on the bed. Now look at your junk. Look at your junk. What you got there, that's your junk. Sitting there, whether it's junk or not, whether it's stuff that pokes out or goes in what, I don't know. It's yoga. Go ahead now, do that thing. I do it, but I did it a lot earlier, and I'm tired of it now. Take your right leg, put it behind your head. Take your left leg, put it behind your head. Now jump, 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 and sit on the bed. And look at your junk. Now turn your head up. Look at the ceiling. What do you see? The ceiling is peeling. The paint's coming up and falling in your eye. Ow! It's going to make you cry. Now remove a leg from behind your head. Remove the other and put it off the bed. Then stand up and brush to the sink and wash the paint out of your eye. It's pink. Oh, no. All right. Good job, everybody. That's great calisthenics. Sorry about the paint in the eye. I didn't intend for that to happen. It wasn't planned that way. Okay. It's good to end a session with a little bit of exercise, get the blood flowing, return to our center selves, to our animal bodies. I want everybody to touch yourself like this right now, just all over. Just, this is my animal body, and I love it. I'm loving my animal body. It's wonderful. Pat yourself. Pat right here, up on the head like this. Pat yourself. Okay, all the way down your face. Pat. Keep patting all the way down. Woo! What's that part you touched? That's your privacy. Don't share that with anybody. Okay? There. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I hope I proved I'm an ISTP. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. Goodbye.